Welcome to the Online Success Journey Podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey Podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 144. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Alexi Neocleous, one of the leading direct response freelance copywriters in Australia and an author. Having worked with small large and small businesses, he is known as a copywriter who gets fast results for his clients. Hello Alex.
Hey, how are we?
We are fine. I know the clan here is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about what you did before you started your own online business, copywriting?
Okay, so I've been copywriting for nearly 20 years. And I started quite young. Before that, I was like 19, 20, 21, etc. I was in sales for the most part, and back then we're talking direct sales, where I would walk outside the office and hit the pavement and knock on doors. Old school direct sales, and we would set the target to speak to 300 people a day. And I remember my very first day on my own, my sales manager said, "Don't return to the office until you've sold everything in your bag." I went, okay. I took his words to heart, and the very first day out, I sold all of my merchandise. And I came back in the office and said, "Well, I'm back." And he goes, "What are you doing back here? Get back out there. You got stuff to sell." I said, "No, I've sold out, like you said." And he looked at me and said, "That's the first time that's ever happened in the history of this office." And so I realized early on that I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed meeting people, knowing people, understanding what makes people tick. And from that, through a series of very long coincidences, I won't get into them here, but long story short, I ended up turning what I'm able to do face-to-face in print. And so, and I found that was my preference, where I would actually prefer crafting salesmanship in print. So back then we were talking direct mail, lots of direct mail. We're talking print ads, radio ads, TV ads, all that sort of stuff. Now everything, well, for the most part, is online right now. I still do some offline stuff, but pretty much everything is online nowadays.
Wow. Did you always wanted to be an author?
What I always was curious about was information. I was very hungry to learn. And so in terms of being an author, no, the answer is no to the question. But how that turned out to be was I learned very early that if I wanted to understand something intricately, I should write about it. And this is partly how I stumbled into copywriting. When I was learning stuff in the beginning, I would just do journal entries and just, if I read a passage from a book, for example, and I wanted to connect the dots in my brain, I would just write about what I've learned and see how, like a stream of consciousness. I found that process to be quite helpful in learning, and over a period of time, my writing just naturally got better as well, until I found myself, being able to write longer and longer and longer. And so I thought, geez, you know what? It became a self-reinforcing process, so to speak. Ultimately, where I actually started really enjoying writing, and that's where it led to writing books and manuals for my courses, and of course writing lots of sales copy for clients too.
I see you have been copywriting for big names around the globe, but why do you do what you do, Alex?
It's an interesting question. I don't know if I have the answer exactly. So as it relates to copywriting, there are some aspects to it that I find interesting. First and foremost, I do like the freedom of time. Like right now, we're talking right now, and it's 7:08 a.m. where I am. So I like the option to get up early some days, or to get up later other days, or to work in the evening some days. So copywriting definitely affords that degree of flexibility. That's number one. Number two, like I said before, I do like to learn. So I do enjoy bouncing from project to project. So copywriting allows me to immerse myself in a new business, in a new product, in a new audience. So I get to fulfill my desire to constantly learn. And I do love deconstructing the human psyche as well, really understanding, like for example, when I write a campaign or craft, not just the copy, but just the entire marketing strategy, the very first thing that I will do is I will understand the individual that is buying the product. And usually that involves creating a very specific avatar. So as an example, years ago, I had to write a sales letter for a vision supplement, like an eye supplement. And to truly understand that audience, what I did was I imagined I was writing the letter to my mother-in-law. And the reason for that is my mother-in-law actually has problems with her eyes. And she just needed some help to improve her vision, and she tried lots of different products. And so to understand what the unique pains of that individual are and how to best communicate to that individual, instead of imagining my mind like an abstract concept of the audience, all I did was imagine I was writing a letter to my mother-in-law. And so that made it for a very personal communication that, in that case particularly, because the sales that are still running and still making money for the client 5 to 6 years later, it worked very, very well. And, it was quite an enjoyable project because I honestly felt like I was writing a letter to my mother-in-law.
Wow. Okay. Let's put money aside because you have been in business for the last 20 years. So we suppose money is not an option for you. How did you know you were really successful?
Copywriting... Okay, so so there's different ways to define that. So success for me is defined as being able to do what I want when I want for as long as I want. There's a high degree of freedom, and so for me, I can work long hours some days, but it's all voluntary. It's all enjoyable. I finish the day very, very satisfied. So from that perspective, that's absolute success. As it relates to copywriting, there's a joke within copywriting circles that, not a joke, more of an understanding. When you can reach the point and you can actually enjoy reading your own sales copy, when you read your sales copy and don't cringe, you're probably a success. And the truth is most copywriters cannot read their own writing, but when you get to that point and you are mesmerized by your own language and your own persuasive arguments, when you have sold yourself on your own, the product you're writing about, then you're probably at a decent skill level.
Can anyone be a good copywriter, or are some more cut out for it than others?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Okay, so I've thought long and hard about this and spoken to many copywriters around the world about it. There seems to be one notable trait that stands out amongst all others. There's a whole bunch of traits, but there's one that seems to be the most common of the top sort of echelon of copywriters, and that is we all have this thing called a fact finder. So what that is there's a test called the Kolbe Index. It's KOLBE. It's a very, very, very effective test that effectively helps you understand when you are left to your own devices, how do you allocate energy? So, for example, when you are on your own, and you're working on a new project, do you need to immerse yourself in background knowledge? Do you break it apart and try to reconstruct it? Do you turn it into a system? Do you just try to work things out off the cuff without any research? There's much more to the Kolbe Index than that, but the bottom line is, one of the most common traits of the best copywriters in the world is they love research. They love spending the time to do a deep dive into the product and into the audience and truly understand, the space. That seems to be the most common. Now, that's not absolutely the case every time. The second trait that the best copywriters have got, and this is a much smaller subset, is they're ideas people. In the Kolbe Index, that's called a quick start. There's a small subset of the greatest copywriters that. So just imagine the amazing salesperson. Imagine the magnetic personality from stage, or imagine the visionary business leader that is engaging mass some mass numbers of people to that person's way of seeing things, or motivating thousands of people in their staff around the world. That's a quick start quality, these big ideas people. So a small subset of the greatest copywriters actually have that as their strongest Colby factor. Those are probably two of the most. I think there is a whole bunch of other factors where if you are not interested or have no sort of care about, you probably can't be a good copywriter. If you don't care about people, if you're not interested in the human condition, if you're not fascinated by what makes people tick and the buying process, I think you probably struggle. And definitely if you don't like writing, you're probably up against a few challenges there. Though having said that, technology's gotten to a point now where you could speak a lot of copy, get it transcribed, have an editing team. You could get around the lack of desire to write if you really wanted to.
How did you get 92% opt-in from an email traffic for one of your clients?
Yeah, so that was actually quite recent. So there was a whole bunch of, that's a very good question. Whole bunch of things went into that. That was for a very competitive space. It's the property investing space here in Australia, which is very competitive. And so what we did there was we have a process that we deploy to truly understand what the audience wants. I won't reveal all the process here because I'll be here forever, but part of the process involves using a software called BuzzSumo as an initial starting point. Should I explain BuzzSumo, or do most of your listeners understand that software?
You can just give us just an idea, briefly,
okay,
if you don't mind.
So BuzzSumo is a very handy software where you can type in pretty much any keyword that you can think of, and it will come back with and return the most viral pieces of content in the world for at least the last year for that keyword. So if you type in the word property investing and you select, say in our case, Australia from the search fields, it will return the most viral pieces of content over Facebook, over Pinterest, over Twitter. Yeah, over Pinterest, Twitter, and Facebook, I think it is, for the last year. And so that is one of our data points. We will jump into BuzzSumo and hit a whole bunch of different keywords related to the audience and just get a general understanding of what is the audience responding to. Another tool that we'll use is SEMrush, which is an SEO tool that has some very powerful, very useful tools within it. Again, it's another perspective to understand what content is Google rewarding for a particular keyword. So this yet another perspective. So BuzzSumo gave us a very social, viral perspective from the social platforms. SEMrush gives us Google's perspective, because what most people don't know is if you type in a keyword search term like, say, property investing, the first listing is what Google is rewarding as the best, most accurate piece of content for that search term. So the number of backlinks that a particular listing gets, or that a particular piece of content gets, is partly a very strong indicator of how good the content is and how relevant it is to that keyword by virtue of the fact that it's got so many backlinks. So that's information that's quite handy, but we just don't use that exclusively. Well, it's just another data point that we use. We also use customer survey data if the client has it. If the client has survey data, say through SurveyMonkey or phone conversations, whatever it may be, that's another data point. So what we tend to do is we grab the BuzzSumo data, we'll grab the SEMrush data, we grab the survey data. We can even look at Amazon.com bestseller lists and see what titles in a space are the best-selling titles, especially currently in the last few months, etc. Again, that's another data point. You can do that on Udemy as well. That's another good source of data for a lot of audiences. So eventually you pull all this stuff together and you're looking for the crossover. So you're looking for what is common between BuzzSumo and SEMrush and the survey data and possibly Amazon and possibly Udemy. You look for that crossover. So if you imagine a Venn diagram, that's the white space in the middle is where the opportunity is. And so that's where the gold is. And so then once you find that information out, then your job is to make sure that people have not seen what you're offering before. So in other words, let's say you do, let's use property investing to keep on our theme here. Let's say that we discover that what everyone wants to know is how will rising interest rates affect property prices in 2018? Okay. Now, here's what you then need to ask yourself. So you've identified what the audience wants. That's most important. But then you need to ask yourself, if I just use that as my title, has my audience seen the answer to this before? Has my audience seen this before? Can they guess the answer? If the answer is no, i.e., if you're the first person that's answering that question for them, then you can just go straight with that title, okay? But if you are a little bit late to the party, if people are asking that question, yet there are others, i.e. your competition, already answering that, then what you need to do now is get proof into your headline. See, this is where you could insert some statistics, or if you're a prolific sort of famous investor, or if you're a popular, like a well-known research firm, you'll put your brand in the headline. So what you need to do is find a differentiating point to help the audience believe and think and understand that what you're going to say is something different from everybody else, or what you're going to say about this will be a better answer than everybody else. This is where you need to get your proof in the headline. So that's how we did it. It's a bit of a long answer. There's a whole bunch of moving parts there, but that's the essence of how we go about achieving results like that.
Wow. Okay, what have you learned from business as a whole?
Wow. Okay, so that's a big question. So if I had to summarize the most important, you know what the most important lesson is? I'll tell you what the most important lesson is. The business is a direct reflection of the person in charge. And it doesn't matter if it's a one-person business or 50,000 employees, it is a direct reflection of the person at the top, the visionary. And I tell you something, what blows me away is the company Apple. Now, it's just to prove the point that it applies for companies big and small. Like for many years, we've been using Apple products. You know, we've got iPads and iPhones and MacBook, and we've got them all over the place, right? And for many, many years, while Steve Jobs was alive, I think we could all agree that it was, amongst the most, if not the most innovative company in the world. Now, I'm still a customer of Apple, but I will probably get off their, I've started getting off their pads. I use other stuff now. My next phone is probably going to be a Google phone. I'm happy with my MacBook Air, so I'll probably keep that. But since he died, that company, in my personal belief, is it's floundered. They haven't innovated. They've tinkered. They've played with product extensions. They haven't created a breakthrough product since he died. So they're a good example, at least in my mind, of the importance of the visionary. And even at a company that big, at one time had a market cap of, $500 billion. Actually, what's the market cap now? Let's have a look. Market cap Apple. I'm curious. What is the market capitalization? Wow, it's even higher now. Incredible. Anyway, the point is, since he's died, it's not the company it used to be. So the biggest lesson that business has taught me is the success of the enterprise is in direct correlation and a reflection of the CEO, the key decision maker at the top.
Everyone can really take into that. Okay. How do you turn into a $5 lead into a 25K client?
Okay, so that's another good question. Let's talk about the evolution of the internet quickly. So 10, 15 years ago, that was much easier to do. So 10, 15 years ago, you could probably just buy some Google AdWords traffic. It was very, very cheap. Send them straight to a landing page or a sales page. And because it was so low competition, you could do that much easier than today. But as the internet has evolved and it's gotten more and more competitive and more people have jumped online, it's a bit more complicated. But here's the way to do that now. Technique number one, or strategy number one, so to speak, is you have a very, very tight target audience, i.e. you know precisely who your best buyer is, and you customize your offering to that one person so that your offering is exactly what they want and they need and are willing to pay for this moment. Okay, that's technique number one. Very difficult to do, probably not very scalable, but it's doable. And that's where you get a very cheap lead for a big sale because your timing was impeccable to the ideal person. That happens here or there, but it's not very scalable. The other way, which is most common for most companies, is they have somewhat of a broader focus. They have an offering, whether it pops up on Facebook ads or Google ads or in SEO, it doesn't matter what it is, in Google. Traffic comes to the site in general, and this is where you've got to do something with that traffic. That do something could be defined as maybe go for the sale immediately. If you've got the appropriate traffic for that, that can work. It could be that you try to get the name or the email with a lot more of a bigger percentage of traffic. That's going to be the right move. Or if you're really hitting the top of funnel, so you've got a very broad, so it's a broader type audience and a broader type of piece of content, what you may need to do there is retarget the bounced traffic. That's where retargeting can really be important. Now, depending on what move you've done there, if you've squeezed the name, then obviously you need an email sequence. If you've squeezed the name, then obviously you can retarget them. If you've squeezed the name and the email and the phone number, that opens the door to phone follow-up and text message as well. If you squeeze the name, email, phone number, and the physical address, now that opens up to everything we've mentioned so far and snail mail. So you can see where I'm going with this. The way nowadays to turn a $5 lead into a $25,000 client, and this is technique number 2, is you approach that visitor from a variety of perspectives. In other words, it's no longer good enough just to send them to a landing page or a piece of content and then hope that that does all the work. It's just not enough. You absolutely need to stay in contact with that visitor in as many different mediums as possible, providing amazing content at every stage. That's how you do it. With the one exception, if we go back to technique number 1, and I'll tell you a story in a moment, the one exception is if your message is speaking to your ideal best buyer right now who is willing and able to pay for the solution that you provide. So here's an example. In we have a content agency, and with our content agency, one of the things that we do for our marketing is we have a direct mail campaign that goes out every month to the founders of the country's fastest growing companies. Okay, that's one of the things that we do. Another thing that we do is we run Facebook ads to an auto webinar funnel, and the auto webinar funnel does all the follow up and all that sort of stuff. Now check out the difference between these two results. Technique number 1, just to refresh the audience, was speaking to your ideal best buyer right at the time when they're willing and able to buy your product because it solves their particular need at that point. So technique number 1 in our case is the direct mail we are doing to the founders of the country's fastest growing companies. We are currently just sending one direct mail letter as the first contact point, and then we are following up with 2 emails. And email number 1 and 2 are pretty much the same, and they pretty much say, hey patients, this is Alexi. I'm the chap that sent you a $5 note in a parcel the other week. Did you receive it? Okay, it's just a follow up to the direct mail piece. We are getting between a 15 to 30% reply rate on just those few contact points. And these are to the founders of the country's fastest growing companies. That is an insanely high result, okay? And that is because our message is very tight and very relevant to our target audience. So we are reaching them at a time when they're thinking about and wanting to solve their particular problem. Compare that to our Facebook efforts, where the audience is much broader and not as qualified and not as financially successful. It's requiring much more follow-up and much more work to get those leads to come through. And that's because the audience is not as tight. It's still getting results, it's still working, etc., but not as quickly as technique number one. Does that answer the question?
Wow. Now we see. Okay. So what is the secret to creating a profitable social media content plan? Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, that's technique number two. Actually, you know what? That's a good question too, because it brings together everything we've spoken about to date. So it brings together first and foremost the research that we do with BuzzSumo and SEMrush and Amazon, et cetera, to identify what is the most interesting content for an audience. That's the most important thing. But I tell you now that content can't live in a vacuum anymore. It's very rare that you can just post a piece of content and then 1 million people find it. It needs to be distributed. It needs to be amplified. It needs to be promoted. So you create this amazing content, then what do? Well, you need to drive traffic to it. Now that could be via SEO, and you have an outreach strategy to get backlinks and guest posts and jump on podcasts, et cetera. Or it could be paid ads where you send traffic from, say, Facebook ads or Google or native platforms such as Taboola and Outbrain. You drive traffic to the content. And then once the visitors arrive at that page with the content, you need to maximize that experience. You can't let them just leave. So we speak to many companies that pay for media, send traffic to a page, but they don't set up a retargeting pixel. It's crazy. Or they don't have an opt-in page, an opt-in box, or a flyover to get name and email. What a shame. Even though they're spending the money. So that's also what's required. You need to do what you can to begin that dialogue with that visitor. And that dialogue can be via retargeting or usually via email of some sort of ongoing communication. It could be getting, at the very least, liking your social media pages. That's not as powerful as getting the email address or retargeting, that's for sure. But yeah, that's what's required anyway. All of this coming together.
Okay. What is one thing that has contributed to your success?
Probably, if I had to say one thing, I'll give you two because they're related. It's the desire to constantly learn, and number two, which is related to the first, never be really satisfied, like constantly hungry to improve. Like, for example, here's a story a situation that came out of yesterday. So one of our clients decided to cancel one of our packages yesterday, completely out of the blue, no heads up. No advance warning, nothing. And we were like, oh my God, what's happened here? This client was just getting the most amazing content humanly possible. The narratives that we were creating for them were truly engaging. And out of the blue, we get a cancellation. And so I spoke to the team and went, geez, we have to look into why this client canceled. And this is where we use the desire to learn more and to never be satisfied to identify what the problem was. And it turned out that this person was in his 70s, so older, obviously, not very tech savvy, struggled with some of the technology to do with, to receiving the content, uploading the content, etc. And so in our case, we just didn't provide good enough old-fashioned customer support to someone who's in his 70s and really struggled with even some of the most basic fundamentals of getting content on a blog. So for us now, we're going to look at our process and see where can we improve the client experience. And we thought to date that we offered great client experience, but a cancellation out of the blue, especially for someone we had what we perceive to be a great relationship with, is feedback that we must pay attention to and that we must learn from and must improve upon.
Okay, you've been in the business for a long time. Do you have a coach or a mentor along your way within your business?
So I've had many mentors over the years. I've done many workshops, many seminars. I've never not had mentors. Some of those mentors have been one-on-one in a paid context. Many others have been via books. Many others, yet again, have been just my network of colleagues. I'm fortunate enough now that I know enough people that have done some very cool things in business where it's easy as picking up a phone or sending a Facebook PM or an email or whatever. So the answer is yes, many mentors. I think it would have to be the hallmark of insanity to try and work everything out yourself. I think whatever result you get going it your own, you would have attained some massive multiple of that outcome with great mentors, for sure.
What is the most valuable thing your mentors or coaches has told you?
Whether they told me or helped me learn it for myself, I'm not sure. It would have to be the visionary of the CEO is what matters most. It would have to be that, absolutely, because everything stems from that. Strategy stems from that. Leadership of the team, how energetic the team is, stems from the visionary's congruency of focus. How much hunger the visionary has, it all stems from that. Yeah.
What is one thing no one knows about you?
What would that be? Because as soon as I say it now, people are going to know that, right? And nobody knows about me for that. I'm not sure. I'm pretty transparent, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what grounds you?
What grounds me? A few things ground me. So specifically grounding, where I go out in the sun 15 minutes a day barefoot and lie on the grass. That's called grounding. What else grounds me is meditation, exercise, time with family, definitely. What grounds me? Yeah, that's a big part of it, I would say. Every morning I do an infrared sauna. That plays a huge role. Cold showers, they're enormously effective. I do those every morning. Lots of things ground me.
Okay. Tell us more about your FIB services and how we can get in contact with you and get useful from those services.
Okay, yeah. So our content services, correct? Yeah. So our company is somewhat unique, and that's again a direct reflection of me. So we have a content agency where we produce content for companies to prepare for their blog and their social, and to drive paid media towards, so that they can scale their paid media campaigns. What makes us entirely different is my background. For so many years, I've been a direct response copywriter, having to produce quantifiable outcomes, usually in the form of sales for clients, where I would be, contracted to write a long copy sales letter, emails, ads, the whole thing, to generate a key KPI. And that key KPI is return on ad spend. So the client spends $100,000 a month on ad spend. What multiple of that does the copy and the strategy return within, say, 30 days, or within 60 days, or within 90 days? Because that's my background, and for many years, that was pretty much the only language I ever spoke. I've brought that into our content agency, where the content that we produce for clients, it's not just good content. It's not just content that gets attention and holds some interest. It's content that, when it is amplified and distributed via other platforms, whether that's Facebook ads or native platforms like Taboola and Outbrain, or whether it's coupled with an SEO strategy, it gets outcome. Often, that outcome leads to some sort of return on investment. As it relates to SEO, definitely it leads to getting backlinks easier, because there's a direct relationship to the quality of the content and the ease of which you're able to get a backlink, especially from a high-profile site, which in turn obviously influences your search engine result rankings. So the essence of what we do is creating content that gets measurable results. And we have a range of packages. Our most affordable package is $7.97 per month. And for that, you get a few thousand words of article content and a few dozen social posts for Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and et cetera, et cetera. And then the word allocation, the amount of content we produce every month, can go from there. We can produce, for one client, we produce 60,000 words per month for their blog and their social. That's 30 articles a month of 2,000 words each, which we are then looking to turn into video content. But this is a company that, generates something like $40,000 a day in sales from their Facebook ads. So they have an incredible platform and foundation to work off, so that our content, when it's combined with the Facebook ads traffic and it's retargeted and the name and the email is captured and all that other stuff we've spoken about, there is the potential for an incredible return on investment on the content. So content, more than anything else nowadays, it really is the future. And this is the main reason we kicked off this agency about 18 months ago, is all the platforms are hungry for content, but the problem is there's so much content out there, it's really hard to cut through the clutter. And given my background and experience, we've got now 17 writers, we've got 9 designers, we have a whole range of unique processes and systems to be able to produce this sort of content, really high quality content that gets the attention and performs at a price that is, as far as I can glean so far, nobody else in the world is able to do just yet. I am searching though to see who's able to do it, and we haven't found anybody yet.
Where can we find it?
Fubi.co, FUBI.co/special. That's Fubi.co/special. That's our main sales page that has all our packages and all the information about how we work. And if you want to go to our blog, just go to fubi.co, and that's where you'll get some of our awesome content and also learn more about us.
Okay. So, Clan, there will be more from Alex in a moment. If you are listening on one of the many platforms rather than my website and you are encouraged by Alex's journey, go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for bonus portion of the interview. The Online Success Journey is a wonderful membership community built for people searching for paths to success. We are one big clan and you can be part of this community for free. Once you have joined the clan, click on part 2 of Alex's journey and over 100 other journeys that are available and learn how you can find the right path for your own online success journey. That's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Alex.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.